Hey everyone, Dr. Karen Hillspruden here. And whenever you see this red behind me, that I am not alone, that I have an awesome, awesome person in the Sister Leader Studio. And today is no different because we're going to be speaking with Kristi Perdue. And look, she is an AI expert, and that is like my most recent thing that I'm in love with. So, I'm like on a high just even having her here. And so this is more for me than it is for you, but you can tag along as we interview Kristi. But Kristi, welcome to the Sister Leaders Podcast and share a little bit about who you are, who you are, who you serve, and the product and services that you serve them with.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, number one. I've been in software, B2B technology, SaaS, whatever you want to call it, for over 30 years. And I was introduced to AI back in 2010, way before people were talking about AI. So I've had a long history with it. And yeah, I was working for an AI company. I've actually worked for corporate America for my entire career until about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was CMO at the time. I've always worked in product or product development, product marketing, and kind of traversed up through that. But I eventually became CMO. I'd always worked with the executive teams and strategy. But I was seeing the same things and fighting the same battles. I felt like I was charging at windmills all the time and trying to get people to understand um, not only how to align, but what marketing meant in many cases, which I know a lot of CMOs feel that way. But um, I had a cerebral aneurysm and hemorrhage, and I ended up having emergency brain surgery. And what that does is it really, I think it drowns out all the noise and everything else that's happening to you. And it made me step back and look at a couple things really quickly. And what it made me realize is that I was serving the wrong people. I was doing a lot of things for corporations that were serving big business, and I didn't feel very productive for myself. And I didn't feel like anything I was doing was contributing to a whole that made me happy. I had a lot to offer. Um, and I had learned a lot over 30 years, but I wanted to take that to some place that made me feel like I was really contributing and really making an impact. And I'd learned a lot working with these executive teams. The one thing I was really good at was translating. And that was translating whether it was between executives or between development teams and the market as a whole, or developers and just internal, because developers have their own speaking language. But that made me really look at the things that I had covered, which a lot of it was governance and compliance. But this all happened to me right at the time that Gen AI had come out. And I was already working with Gen AI. I was working with an AI company, and I knew that governance was going to be a big deal. I also knew that Gen AI and the impact it was going to have on employees, people in general. It was a new way of doing business. I knew that immediately just because I'd been around a lot of things with AI, and I knew the ease of using it was going to be really, really game changing and emotional for a lot of people. I just, when I got home from the hospital and I thought about it for a little while, I quit. I quit. I said, okay, I have to do something different. And I'd never done that before. I've always been entrepreneurial, but I had never done my own business. I had never operated my own business. But from that second on, I never looked back. I started creating a world around me and what I knew would need to be done. And my whole theory, vision was around helping, yes, maybe enterprises eventually or people that I'd worked with before, because that I'm sure working with software companies would be feel comfortable. But I wanted to work with SMBs, small business owners, people who are trying to get their businesses started and help them leverage this really powerful, cool tool because a lot of people are even afraid of just normal technology. This was going to be a crazy technology, one that didn't make sense to a lot of people. I wanted to help them learn not only how to leverage this tool, but how to implement it in their business and kind of turn off all the noise and make this thing, I'll call it a thing, make it make sense so that they could actually use it for business advantage because we can get into it, and I'm sure we will. But most aren't getting past the this is noise, this is a toy, or denying that it's even happening. Um, so when you ask who I'm, it was a long answer to your question, but I'm very passionate about this, if you can't tell, because it was a life-changing thing that happened to me. And when I decided to go down this path, because it just was this huge epiphany and explosion, literally, of my brain, but that happened to me. But I finally found my purpose in this and my desire to really help um, service-led, expert-led entrepreneurs really focus in and get an edge up. And and Gen AI helps you get that edge, helps you nuance things and make decisions and collaborate differently. And that's what I wanted to do. And it's I've been working on that for the last 3 years, and it's finally now, I think, because the tools have advanced and people are getting a little bit more comfortable with the notion of AI. I'm having the time of my life right now. I really am. I
Awesome.
haven't looked back since all of this happened, and probably a much longer answer than you expected, but um, it just is very gratifying to work with people and know that you're really helping what they're going to produce or what they're going to, just seeing the difference in someone when you can turn something that's taken them days to produce or do in the past or weeks, and you can turn that into something that takes minutes or alleviates the worry or alleviates the need of hiring somebody because they thought they were going to have to hire two or three people or a person that they didn't know how they were going to afford. I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, I'm pretty excited too. I'm pretty excited about AI. And so I do have some questions here. And so we're not going to get to all of them because I got too excited when I was writing the questions, but we're going
And
to
I'll
get
try
to.
not to, yeah, I'll try not to pontificate so much.
So my first question is how can leaders quickly identify whether their current AI efforts are actually driving business value?
Yeah, this is one that's interesting. A lot of leaders, no matter what size business, started to use AI and then afterwards went, where's the value? When you start to implement, you really need to ask yourself why. Why are you implementing AI? What is your goal? And in that, I talk about strategy a lot and needing a strategy. And depending on how big you are, you may need to have a really long discussion around strategy and how AI impacts. your goals and your strategy and alignment. And there's a lot to be unburied there. But there are specific metrics that Gen AI really impacts. And it's everything from reduction of cost to increasing revenue, entering new markets. If you want to reallocate full-time employees, and notice I said reallocate, not get rid of.
Hmm.
There's a few others. There's about five main ones. But you have to start implementing AI with those in mind. What are your goals? To begin with, what's your why? Why are you implementing AI and what do you expect the outcome to be? So many just started to say, oh, I'm going to start using ChatGPT and I'm going to start using it for this. And then the end went, but I don't understand what the value was, what I've gained out of it. It's because they didn't have a plan. So, as far as leaders getting the real true business value out of what they're doing, there's a little bit more structure than just picking up a tool and using it. For AI to really generate that value, they need to have some of these discussions around what am I trying to accomplish? Am I trying to uh, alleviate a bottleneck? Is there a challenge I'm trying to overcome? Is there a purpose for why I'm using AI here? And that's what a lot of businesses and a lot of leaders haven't done, frankly.
I love that. I love that. So what I hear you say is they still need to do it the old school way, which is create the organizational goals and then assess AI as one of the tools that can help them obtain those organizational goals, but the goals need to be created ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And many have goals already, but not typically evaluated with AI in play.
Yeah.
And AI can change the goals, they can change the strategy. Entering a new market uh, several years ago, saying, hey, I want to go into Latin America would be a huge issue, a huge endeavor. Right now, saying, hey, I want to take this offer into Latin America is not that big of a deal anymore. Not with AI.
Hmm.
So that can open up an entire new revenue stream, an entire new market, but an entire new thought in someone's head about what's possible. And that's the brilliance of AI. It's the ability now to think about what's possible. And it actually be built into the goals, be built into the strategy because it is possible. Your teams may be capable of doing it. And that's a difference in the mindset of using AI and planning for why you're using it versus just picking it up and saying, hey, I'm using AI and doing a checkbox.
So we're kind of leaning in a little bit when we're talking about business value. So let's go ahead and lean into business value and ROI. And so, how do you ensure AI initiatives align with overall business strategies, not just tech trends?
Yeah, I mean, this goes along with what I was somewhat talking about there. This is where, um, prime example is when a lot of organizations decided they were going to roll out Copilot. It was a tech trend. Microsoft had their new release. The difference is that Copilot isn't just a word upgrade. This is where you come back down to the fact of why did you roll out Copilot? And the fact that AI is different. It's not your normal software. It's not just another tool, which a lot of organizations and a lot of leaders wanted to treat it as. This goes back to the initial, and I always say this, there's three things, and I'll go a little bit beyond what you asked, but I think it's important right here. There's three things that to be successful in AI that you have to do. And the first thing is discuss the strategy. Sit down and have that discussion with your leadership team and how AI impacts your goals. You have to have that. If you don't, you're going to be sitting outside and not understanding your why. And it is so important to have the alignment across your team of why you are doing this. The second is to understand that AI was built to enhance processes. It's an enhancer, it's an enabler. There may be certain processes in your company that you are not ready to alter for whatever reason. I think the quote was 21% by McKinsey of companies that initially rolled out AI, only 21% looked at or changed any of their processes, and that's why they weren't seeing ROI. They put it on top of old processes
Mm-hmm.
and potentially bad processes, ones that had broken or bottlenecks in it. You have to be willing, or at least acknowledge that there are some processes that you're just not willing to mess with right now. And that means that that process isn't a candidate for AI right now. You have to understand where you are. And the third one is you have to train your people. AI is kind of a new language of doing business, and adoption or activity doesn't equal proficiency. It just doesn't. This is an entirely new language. So, and we can go in depth on that, but understanding that there is a thing called AI does not equal, and feeling like you can write an email using it, it's a little bit better, does not equal understanding how to strategically collaborate with it and get the results you should have. So when you ask the question you did, these three things equal getting that strategic value out of it, equal having the strategy and the goals, and therefore the ROI after the fact. You can't get ROI out of having random acts of AI.
So that's good to move right into my next question, which is what is one overlooked area where AI can drive immediate revenue or efficiency gains?
One overlooked area. I'm going to say that this is, I could go two ways on this. I can say that the overlooked area that is really in training your people. Most organizations are, or training yourself as a leader. Most are getting what I would say is basic training, and they start using ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, and they feel like, oh, I get this. And then they're still kind of using it very similar to Google, or they're just writing emails with it. And that is like sticking the very end of your pinky in the water in comparison to what it's really capable of doing. Really learning what Gen AI is capable of. Once you do that, the ability for enhanced decision making to really dig in. It's kind of like I equate it to you have a 15-year-old teenager that you want to absolutely do exactly what you need, and you have to learn how to instruct it to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people can figure out how to do that. But then on the other side, you have an executive coach. Very different way of communicating, very different results, very different conversations that could be game changing at a leadership level, even for a solopreneur, where maybe you have a VA that you treat as the 15-year-old, but you have the ability to learn how to speak to the executive coach that can extract information out of you, that can advise, that can contribute, that can collaborate, that can change everything for your company.
Yep.
Not that it's doing things for you, but that it can stretch your mind, can stretch the discussions, can be that executive coach that gets the insights out of you and to you that makes a huge difference. Huge. So that's the one thing that's being overlooked by so many, that it's really about digging in and really learning. Now I could go to, yeah, well, it's this one little workflow here that if you do that, but those are easy. All the different workflows in any company, those are easy. The real answer is digging in and really learning, especially if you're a solopreneur or a small company. Learning how to collaborate with this new language, spending the time, getting the training, whatever it takes. But there is a big difference between having the 15-year-old that AI is as the assistant, that you have to make sure that you give them all those details and repeat it a lot to make sure that you get that 15-year-old to even come back home, versus this collaborative coach that, oh, I could just have an entire hour of conversation about the collaborative coach and what it's capable of doing and helping for your business. That's where you put your time. And that's also where you try to get your staff to the capabilities, maybe not to where you get yourself as a leader, but you try to get your staff at least to understand that there's both.
Yep.
It's a huge
Yep.
difference.
I love that. And that's I won't use the word fascination, but that is what I am as I go through learning more and more about, is the ability to utilize AI as a strategic partner,
Yes.
and the information that can come out of viewing it as a strategic partner, and the capabilities and the different things that the different programs and the thousands of programs that are out there, other than the 5 or 10 that everybody keeps mentioning, that can do so much for entrepreneurs. And so my next question has to do with leadership and decision making as we're utilizing these various software in our businesses. So, what role does executive accountability play in successful AI adoption?
Executive accountability. This is one that I don't know that there's any of these questions that I'm not going to feel very passionate about, but a lot of leaders like to have liked. I think there's some that are coming back around to this, but AI is just a technology, right? It's a software tool. It goes to IT. This is the difference here. AI is when you start talking about the industrial, right? Everybody's saying it's game changing, it's disruptive, it's a new way of doing business, which is one thing I always say. AI is the most different, impactful thing that I could ever have even imagined to come up with, as far as how it impacts a business, let alone personally, it's going to impact everyone as well. Even if you wanted to avoid it and didn't want to have anything to do with AI, your customers, your colleagues are somewhat going to push this on you because there's going to be an expectation change in the world. It's already happening. So in essence, it will be forced upon you, at least in some manner, to understand how AI works or to understand how to use it. This is the time, if there was any time, where leaders, meaning the founder, the CEO, needs to take ownership because this is also the epitome of a people and process, then technology issue. The accountability of how your people understand what's going on, to alleviate fear, to understand the changes that are happening, the need for transparency, leadership accountability sits at the top with how successful you're going to be with AI and how well your staff, employees, and it doesn't matter whether you're a 2-person or 3-person shop or a 20,000 person shop. The accountability is with the C-level and then every leadership row underneath that to make sure that the employees and the staff understand the why, the strategy, and the support of how to use it. And that is from the top down, sits on the top leaders' shoulders as accountability for making sure that they are being as transparent as possible in my world, as transparent as possible, to make sure because the world right now is a very scary place if you listen to all the noise. And it's the leaders' place and responsibility to try to alleviate some of that noise for their employees and their staff.
I love that. So let's look down the road 3 to 5 years. So what skills will define the most successful leaders in the next 3 to 5 years because of AI?
Uh, I will echo what I said earlier. Knowing how to collaborate effectively with AI is going to be a huge skill. The ones who spend the time will be the ones who outpace the others. It is not, it's not like just picking up Word and becoming proficient at using Word or effective at, I would say effective at using Word. The people who really dig in and learn how to collaborate with AI and leverage it, those are going to be the ones in 3 to 5 years that are so far ahead. They're going to be the ones that flip, and we will see a lot of flips in leadership of companies as far as Microsoft may be at the top today, but in 3 to 5 years, will OpenAI be ahead of them? Who knows? We don't know. There will be a lot of shifts in where certain companies sit. How many software companies are still in existence because of some of this. But being able to learn how AI impacts the company, and I think a lot of this is the mindset and accepting that it's no longer should I use AI, but how can AI help me? How can AI help? Thinking more about what's possible now because of AI. Those who transition to, and it's not easy, and I'm not saying it's easy, but transitioning from thinking about AI as a thing that's kind of like Google into thinking like AI, thinking in AI, thinking with AI, those who have that mindset change and start thinking about the possible because of AI in 3 to 5 years will be so far ahead of those who don't. And the ability to outpace, from a business perspective, the ability to outpace other companies is going to be so evident, probably quicker than 3 to 5 years. Within a couple years, that's going to be so evident. And I think a lot of the smaller companies that are just being created right now, eh, I really feel like and this is my opinion for what it's worth, I really feel like we're going to see a shift in status of where companies sit today as far as depending on how they are reacting to AI.
My next question is, how do leaders balance speed with thoughtful decision making when implementing AI?
Yeah. I think it's a great question because everybody jumped in really fast. Not everybody, but the companies that started reacting really fast, that jumped in. So um they're also the ones that to me, I call them the ones that threw darts at the board. They were just throwing AI at anything to see what stuck. And those are the ones now that had a whole bunch of pilots that just didn't go anywhere. A lot of activity, but not real results. And I think with AI, you have to be very intentional. You have to go through, and again, I go back to the fact it's not your normal software, it's not your normal um, quote tool. You have to sit down and go through the process in order to roll it out. You have to kind of slow down for a second. Um, those who slow down for the second and go through the process that's needed to think through it, do the strategy, think through the strategy and how it's going to impact you. Look at how, just because you want to do something doesn't mean that you can or that you're ready.
Yep.
Prioritize the use cases based off of your why, based off of your honest assessments of where you are with data, with governance, with your people, with your training, with your processes that you're willing to re-engineer. Attack 1 to 2 at a time. You're looking at, for a Gen AI rollout of 1 to 2 processes, but getting people trained, you're looking at a good 90 days to start seeing some small returns, but you're looking at a 12-month cycle to really start to see something scale out, to really start seeing the ROI, and that's on average. This isn't a short-term thing. Now, can you see short-term results? Yeah, you can write a custom GPT or do an automation. You can do a lot of really cool short-term things with Gen AI. But when you're talking about the impact to your company, and again, when you're really looking at this to have the business impact, looking at your strategic processes, looking at what you want to do for revenue growth, business impact, not just efficiencies, but looking at the long term and your strategy impact. It's a longer term plan that needs the diligence behind it, and it needs to be more intentional.
So you mentioned the word pilot, and the reason why some of them really don't even get out of the pilot phase. And so I do have a question here. I was looking for it, that says, what does moving from pilot to production without chaos actually require?
I think a lot of that, I'll go back to my discussion previously. It requires an intentional plan. Um, the ones that I have seen that have been successful are because the organization went through the discussions up front and prioritized the use case, understood what they were trying to do and why. They understood their metric of what they were trying to accomplish. They took a foundational metric, graded it along the way. They had an outlook of the outcome of what they wanted to accomplish. They had an owner. There are so many people who have started pilots without someone who owned it. That's why a lot ended up in pilot and purgatory, per se. You have to have somebody who owns it and not just say IT as a big department. Those who, again, go through the process that's necessary to manage a deployment of a big change versus thinking it's just a technology. I go back to that. It's just a technology, right? It's just a tool. It's a software. It's a piece of software. You can just throw it over the wall. It's not that complicated, right? That's what gets people in trouble. Being able to plan out a pilot and make sure that you understand what you're starting with, what your goal is, what it's going to impact. You're communicating that you have an owner. You already assessed where your data is, what the quality is, and you're not guessing on that as you're going. You have to do the upfront work. Those companies that do the upfront work, they've prioritized, they know exactly what they're targeting, they know what their metrics are and the measures that they're going for. Once they hit those, rolling to production, not a big deal. That's the difference. The ones that I see that actually roll out to production have all those things done first. They may not have trained their people yet, and that may be coming next, but they have the other pieces in play.
So let's talk about your framework, Power Moves AI. So I am very interested in hearing about this. So what is the core philosophy behind your Power Moves AI framework?
Yeah, I wrote a book. It was called Power Moves: The No BS Guide to Leading with AI. And the premise behind that, there's a lot of things that come natural to leaders, but there are also a lot of things that as leaders, and again, remembering I've worked 30 years in software and I've seen this many, many times, that get shortcut as we move forward, and that I'll use one example, training. Well, we'll get training, of course. Or but maybe it's one class, one session, or we will contract out to have 101 training that we make available and we don't make it mandatory because it's expensive when we look at the budget and we look at the things that we want to do or accomplish. When I talk about power moves and with looking at AI and the fact that it is so disruptive and such a change, I I identified at least seven that are the things that most leaders will look at and acknowledge, yeah, they need to be done, but likely won't go above and beyond to do them. It's the leaders that do them that will excel in the era of AI. And these things are everything from mindset and really grasping the AI mindset and making an effort to make sure that they understand everything about AI, to asking for help around AI, whether that's hiring a CAIO or bringing in an expert to help train people. Most defer to, okay, I've seen you use AI, so you're going to be over AI, or you're the CDO, so you do data, so you're also now the person over AI in an enterprise. Forgetting that AI is new to everybody, not focusing on the fact that this is an expertise and that it takes someone's entire focus to really give this time. It's things like training. And I think I've harped on that enough here, but really doubling down on training and what it means. Learning enough to collaborate, not just focusing on the 15-year-old. Communication is one of them. Yeah, we'll put together an email and we'll throw it out and say we're doing AI versus having a comprehensive communication plan. There's several others. I don't include governance as one of those, which is surprising because I'm certified in AI governance. But governance is going to be a uh, rules to get in. You have to do AI governance. But it's those that do the proactive auditing to make sure that their AI, their LLMs haven't drifted, to make sure that they're doing certain things if they're developing anything. Those are the ones who are going to be ahead. There's certainly other power moves. There's others that I've brought out in my newsletter. But when you start looking at the companies that are going above and beyond, and I say above and beyond because it's beyond what has been our norm up until now. Most companies don't do continual training across the board because it's expensive. But this is a time they're going to have to pull out and do that if they want to leverage AI to its fullest. They're going to have to put together extensive communication plans to make sure that everyone understands and has a transparent view of what's going on. They're going to have to really work on the mindset to understand what AI really is and why their people are reacting the way they are. This isn't something they can just ignore and assign to somebody else. So that's the premise behind my framework and how it applies to basically everything that I do with the work that I do. I don't believe that AI is capable of any time soon, and certainly not right now, of replacing a human. It does not have judgment. It does not have empathy. It does not have the things that decisions in business require right now. There are some jobs it can do, but it still needs and they call it human in the loop, but it still needs a human in the loop to supervise, to review, to contribute. If you're lucky in some of the processes, you get to a 10% up front that the human has to do, 80% in the middle that AI can do, and a 10% at the end that the human has to review and edit and approve. That would be an ultimate process. The humans still needed. AI is not smart enough yet. Not yet. I'm
So
not
let me tap into another gap that
sure.
you mentioned earlier too, Kristi. You talked about organizational readiness. So before we get too far
Mhm.
away from that statement that you made, I had put a little star beside a question that I had here. What are the biggest readiness gaps you typically see in organizations?
Yeah, other than training, and the people readiness, a big one is data and data quality. Um, the other one, and this kind of goes to training, but it's a little different. I'm working with an organization right now where they've trained and the staff understands it, but there's a people side, culture side of because there hasn't been a communication plan, there is a lack of a lack of, I don't want to say understanding, there is a lack of desire to give in to use AI for their business to do the parts of their job because they're still afraid of what if that means my job goes away? What if that means I don't really understand what the company is going to do with AI? So this comes down to the communication plan and how transparent the company might be or not be with what they're saying about their why for AI. So I think that some of the gaps that I'm seeing is in communication. That's a big one. I'm seeing gaps in data quality and segmenting out how they want to use the data and getting that ready. And a lot of times there's a various different things you have to do there. And the training, yeah, I've gone into companies where they think, hey, we've done training, our people are confident, and this goes along with other things that I've seen with other studies, that they're scoring 40s on proficiency exams, and that's failing. It's failing. So they think they're confident, they think they know what they're doing, but they're still putting the company at huge risk because they really don't understand. So those are the three major gaps I see is the overconfidence, the still really I would say projecting that they're okay with AI, but really not because there's really no communication happening. So there's still a really big uneasiness, and the data quality is still a big issue. It's getting better, but there's still a big issue.
Okay. So I got one more question before we wrap it up. And so that question is, what final message do you want to leave with leaders who want to stay competitive in this AI driven era?
The final message is if you do nothing else, if you do nothing else, learn how to communicate with AI for your even personally, if that's the only thing you do as a solopreneur, as a leader of an SMB, as a leader of an enterprise, the more you show from a point of leadership that you are comfortable communicating, collaborating with AI, and you expect more out of those collaborations, the more comfortable you are, the more comfortable others will get. You show the leadership, others will follow, others will understand, others will see that you are leading the company into that era and start to feel more confident about them using it, them being experimental. Um, that's what AI is about, is be experimenting. It's elevated my creativity, my innovation. That's something you want to exploit in your people. And exploit may not be the right word, but it's a good word as well. You want to encourage, you want to leverage that, you want to use that because that AI gets you so pumped up when you start seeing what it starts bringing out new things in you. Um, you want to encourage that in everyone, in yourself first, so that you know how to do that with everyone else. The tech is the least of your worries. It really is.
I love it. So this has been wonderful. Of course, I can go on and on and on and on, but they won't let me. But so you mentioned your book, so definitely share where they can get your book and then share how they can stay connected with you, share if you have any programs, and then how they can definitely stay in touch with you on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find my book again. It's Power Moves, the No BS Guide to Leading with AI. You can find that on Amazon. And you can find me at on my website at alterbridgestrategies.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, and it's at Kristi Perdue. My name's on the screen. That's my LinkedIn handle. And I would love to hear from anybody. I have several programs running right now. I do monthly lunch and learns, and I'm also starting at the end of April. I am running a expert-led training session for our expert-led businesses training cohort for six. I think it's six training sessions over April, May, and April, May, June. There's six sessions. They're spread out by several weeks. But you can find out more about that as well by contacting me on LinkedIn, and I can share the link with you. But I'm starting to promote that this month.
Awesome, awesome. So yes, definitely connect with Kristi because look, she stays on board with all the changes in AI. And that's another thing. We have to, as they continue to roll out, continue to update different versions and
Man.
add on to all of these programs that we're tinkering with right now. For those of you who are just getting your feet wet, then they do have further capabilities the older they get. And so Kristi stays abreast of all of those changes. And you heard that she is a big governance person, the do's and don'ts, risk management for you business owners and you individuals who work in corporate. And so I'm excited. Stay connected with Kristi. But before we leave today, I will be remiss if I didn't mention the conference is coming up in October
Okay.
2nd and 3rd at the Rivers Casino in Portsmouth, Virginia. We are back at the casino for year 3. Pretty excited about that. And so we're going to do it again. Excited that we will also be connected for our global community. So we'll be live streaming for those who can't make it into Portsmouth, Virginia. But this year we are going to do it big. And our theme this year is purpose led, profit focused. Because if you know anything about me, I believe that if you follow your purpose, the profit will come. The other way around can get you in trouble. If you follow the profits, that usually lead to some things that lack integrity. And so follow your purpose and then the profits will come. And so if you want more information about the conference, it is Sister Leaders with a S conference.com. And of course, as we get closer and closer, we will promote and you'll hear more and more and more because we'll start sharing more information. But look, I am so excited. Thank you so much, Kristi, for sharing your wisdom. Everybody has an interest in AI. Even some of us have a big interest And then some of us have an interest of curiosity, but everybody's talking about it. And so you are definitely a person to know. And so, gonna sign off on this evening. See you for the next leader here at the Sister Leaders Podcast. Bye.